The battlefield awaits. The Sci-fi Empire had ruled the galaxy for centuries. It had crushed countless civilizations, erased entire species, and burned thousands of planets. No one dared to challenge its power. Today was supposed to be another easy victory. The Empire's Grand Fleet, over 10,000 warships strong, floated in the cold darkness of space. Massive dreadnoughts, sleek cruisers, and deadly fighter squadrons surrounded the last rebel stronghold, a dying planet known as Viridon 4. Admiral Chorus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the battle unfold. The rebel fleet was already in ruins. Their last warships had been turned into burning wrecks. Escape pods drifted helplessly, their occupants doomed. "This war is over," Chorus said with a cruel smile. His officers nodded, their scaled faces glowing under the red light of the command center. Victory was certain. The rebels had no reinforcements, no fleet left, only the remains of their shattered defenses. "Prepare the final bombardment," Chorus ordered. The planet below was home to billions of rebels, refugees, and those foolish enough to resist the Empire. Soon, it would be nothing but dust. Then, something changed. An officer's voice broke the silence. "Sir, unidentified vessel detected." Chorus frowned. "More rebels?" "No, sir," the officer said, his voice shaky. "It's a single ship, human." The bridge fell silent. Chorus narrowed his eyes. "Human? Are you sure?" Humans were a small, unimportant species from a distant sector. They had no real empire, no grand armies, and no place in the great wars of the galaxy. One human ship meant nothing. "Put it on the main screen," Chorus ordered. The display flickered, showing a lone vessel emerging from hyperspace. It was small, barely the size of a heavy cruiser. Its design was sleek, angular, and painted pure black. There were no visible weapons, no energy signatures, nothing that suggested it was a warship. The officers laughed. "One ship," one of them said. "Do they think they can scare us?" "Typical humans," another sneered. "Weak. Pathetic." Chorus smirked. "Destroy it." The command was given. 5 Zalthor warships locked onto the human vessel. Missiles were loaded, laser batteries charged. The attack was swift. 5 torpedoes raced through space, streaking toward their target. Then something impossible happened. The human ship vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, not hit. It simply disappeared. The torpedoes passed through empty space, detonating far beyond their target. The bridge of the Dominator fell into stunned silence. "What happened?" Chorus demanded. "Scanning now." The officer's voice was full of panic. "Sir, the ship is..." Before he could finish, the human vessel reappeared. But this time, it was right in the middle of the Zalthor formation. A ghost, a shadow, moving like nothing they had ever seen before. Chorus felt something cold settle in his chest. The human ship was still silent. No transmissions, no demands. It was waiting. For what? Chorus didn't know. And for the first time in his life, he felt afraid. The silent challenger. The bridge of the Dominator was frozen in silence. Every officer, every crew member stared at the screen, watching the impossible unfold. The human ship hovered in the center of the Zalthor fleet, motionless yet menacing. It didn't fire. It didn't send a message. It simply existed, like a hunter waiting for its prey to move. Admiral Chorus clenched his fists. He had crushed fleets, burned planets, and commanded battles that decided the fate of entire civilizations. Yet in this moment, staring at this one human vessel, a feeling he had never known before crept into his bones. Doubt. "Sir, what are your orders?" An officer asked, his voice shaky. Chorus shook off his hesitation. This was absurd. One ship. One. Against the might of the Zalthor Empire, it didn't matter what tricks it used. "Surround it," he ordered, voice sharp. "Box it in and fire at will." The Xal-Thor fleet moved like a well-oiled machine. 50 warships encircled the lone vessel, weapons armed. Fighters zipped into position, forming a lethal perimeter. The human ship didn't move. A predator's grin spread across Chorus' face. "Let's see your tricks now, human." Fire. The fleet unleashed a storm of destruction. Lasers, torpedoes, plasma cannons, a full barrage. Enough to shatter a dreadnought, enough to erase a planet. For 3 full seconds, the darkness of space turned into a burning inferno of light. Then, as the energy faded, the officers expected to see nothing left of the human vessel. Instead, they saw something that shouldn't be possible. The human ship was still there, untouched. Not a single scorch mark, not a single dent in its hull. It hadn't dodged. It hadn't blocked. The attacks had simply passed through it. The bridge of the Dominator went silent again. Fear spread like a disease. Chorus' jaw tightened. "What is this?" "Sir," a communications officer whispered, eyes wide. "We're getting a transmission." "From the human ship?" "No, sir." The officer swallowed hard. "From our own fleet." Chorus frowned. "Put it through." A desperate voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Yoros of the Bloodfang. We've lost control. Our weapons, our engines, they're shutting down." Another voice cut in. "Same here. Our systems air static." One by one, the warships of the Xal-Thor fleet went silent. Engines powered down, weapons deactivated, shields collapsed. In mere moments, the Empire's greatest war fleet became helpless metal coffins drifting in space. The human ship still hadn't fired a single shot. Chorus' heart pounded. His mind raced for answers, but there were none. For the first time in Xal-Thor history, they were powerless. And the human ship, it was still just waiting. For what? Chorus didn't know. And that terrified him more than anything. A message without words. Admiral Chorus' claws dug into the metal railing of his command console. The hum of the Dominator's engines had vanished. The once mighty Xal-Thor fleet, a force feared across the galaxy, now drifted like dead leaves in the void. No weapons, no shields, no control. All because of one human ship. It hadn't fired a single shot. It hadn't spoken a single word. And yet, it had won. "Sir," a trembling officer's voice shattered the silence. What do we do?" Chorus didn't answer. He didn't know. His mind screamed for an explanation. Was it a new weapon? A psychic attack? Some advanced alien technology? None of it made sense. Nothing made sense. Then, something happened. The human ship moved. Not with the sluggish drift of a warship adjusting course. It moved with purpose. A shift in space, almost imperceptible. One moment it was there, and the next it was closer. A whisper of motion. No propulsion signature. No energy readings. Just movement. A ripple of panic spread across the Dominator's bridge. "Sir, should we?" The ship vanished. Chorus' breath caught in his throat. Gone. Every scanner, every sensor, every display showed the same thing. Nothing. The officers stared in horror at the empty space where the human ship had been. Then, a shadow. It wasn't on the scanners. It wasn't on the screens. It was on the viewports. Outside the Dominator, against the vast darkness of space, the human ship was right there. So close that Chorus could see its hull. Smooth, black, silent. It hadn't warped. It hadn't jumped. It had moved like a ghost, slipping past their sight and appearing at their doorstep. Then, something even worse happened. The lights flickered. The screens glitched. And in that moment, everyone felt it. A presence. Not a voice. Not a sound. Just a feeling. Something was watching them. Cold. Unblinking. Unfathomable. A predator looking down at prey. Admiral Chorus, conqueror of 1,000 battles, felt his throat go dry. His instincts screamed, his body locked in place. It wasn't just his crew. The entire Xalthor fleet felt it. Not through their ships, not through their scanners. Inside their minds. A message without words. A warning without sound. Leave, not a request, not a demand. An inevitability. Like the silence before a supernova. Like the shadow of a black hole. Like death itself. For the first time in his life, Admiral Chorus understood true fear. He had to make a choice. Challenge the unknown. Or flee and live. His claws trembled. His mouth felt dry. He opened his mouth and gave an order he never thought he would say. Retreat. The retreat that wasn't. The word felt foreign in Admiral Chorus' mouth. Retreat. The officers on the Dominator hesitated, their eyes wide with disbelief. The Xalthor Empire did not retreat, not in 1,000 battles, not against any foe. And yet, here they were, helpless, cornered, afraid. "Sir, should we send a distress signal?" An officer stammered. Chorus clenched his jaw. To who? Who would dare come to their aid against a ship that had already rendered their fleet powerless without firing a single shot? No, there was only one option. "Engage emergency thrusters," he commanded. "Get us out of here." The bridge crew rushed to obey. Hands moved across controls, activating the Dominator's remaining subsystems. Engines flickered to life. Other ships followed. They turned. They ran. Or at least, they tried. Nothing happened. Chorus' stomach twisted. "Status report," he barked. "Sir, our thrusters." The officer's voice was barely above a whisper. "They're online, but we're not moving." Chorus' eyes darted to the viewport. They were still in the same position. The other ships were still there too. Frozen. Every vessel, every warship, every fighter in the Xalthor fleet, trapped, held in place by an unseen force. Panic spread through the bridge. Officers checked and rechecked systems. Thrusters were active. Power was at full capacity. By all logic, they should be moving. But they weren't. Something was holding them still. Something beyond their understanding. Then, the human ship moved again. Not in a normal way. Not like any ship in the known universe. One moment, it was ahead of them. The next, it was behind. It didn't warp. It didn't accelerate. It was just there. A new presence filled the bridge, an overwhelming, suffocating sensation of power. Then, the voices started. Not from the speakers. Not from their comms. From inside their heads. 1,000 whispers. No words. No language. Just knowledge. Cold. Final. Absolute. Chorus' breathing grew ragged. He could feel it. Not just him. His officers. His entire fleet. They all felt it. The weight of an unseen will pressing down on them. The realization settled in like ice spreading through his veins. This was not a ship. This was something else. Something far beyond them. Then, like a predator who had grown bored of its prey, the force holding them in place vanished. Every ship lurched forward as their thrusters finally obeyed. Engines roared. Power surged. And for the first time in Xalthor history, a full Imperial fleet fled a battlefield without a single casualty. Without a single fight. Without understanding what had just happened. As they sped away, Admiral Chorus dared one last glance at the viewport. The human ship had not followed. It simply drifted there, waiting, watching. And though no voice spoke, no message was sent, Chorus knew what it meant. You were allowed to leave. This time, the fear that would not fade. Even at maximum speed, the Xalthor fleet took hours to clear the battle zone. No enemy pursued them. No weapons fired. Nothing chased them. Yet, Admiral Chorus could still feel it. That human ship. That thing. It lingered in the back of his mind like a shadow that wouldn't leave, even light years away. And he wasn't the only one. The bridge was silent. No one spoke. No one dared. Even the war-hardened officers, warriors who had raised entire planets without hesitation, sat in their seats like hollow shells of themselves. Chorus turned to his sensors officer. "Are we being followed?" His own voice sounded weak. The officer checked the displays, then checked again. "No, sir. It hasn't moved." A long pause. "But..." Chorus' claws tightened. "But what?" The officer's breathing hitched. His mandibles twitched. "It's still watching us." Chorus felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. The ship was millions of kilometers away. Their scanners barely registered it anymore. And yet every single officer on board knew it was still there. Watching. How? What kind of ship could do that? What kind of thing could reach across the void and let you know, without a sound, without a transmission, that you were still prey? A sharp beeping sound broke the silence. A transmission request. Chorus nearly jumped out of his seat. From the human ship, his officers turned to him, waiting, frozen in uncertainty. He hesitated. His claws hovered over the console. Then, slowly, he pressed accept. For the first time, they would hear from their enemy. The screen flickered, and then came the voice. A single voice. Cold, calm, unshaken. "Do not return." That was all. Nothing else. And yet it carried more weight than any declaration of war Chorus had ever heard. The screen went black. Silence swallowed the bridge once more. No one moved. No one dared to move. Because in that moment, they understood. This wasn't just a ship. This wasn't just a battle. They had encountered something beyond their comprehension. Something old. Something patient. Something that had allowed them to leave. And something that would not be merciful a second time. Chorus finally exhaled, his body trembling as he sat back down. Then he gave the only order that made sense. Plot a course for the homeworld. The officers moved quickly, desperate to put distance between them and whatever that thing was. As the fleet jumped into the void, the thought lingered in Chorus' mind. Not a victory. Not a loss. Just a warning. And the worst part, they didn't even know what they had been warned about. The war that never was. The journey back to the Salthor homeworld was the longest in Admiral Chorus' life. The fleet was silent. No celebrations, no war songs, no reports of battle glory, because there had been no battle. And yet, every warrior aboard the ships felt like they had barely survived one. When the fleet finally arrived, the Imperial High Command awaited Chorus' report. The Grand War Council, a chamber filled with the most ruthless and experienced warlords of the Salthor Empire, listened as Chorus recounted the events. A lone human ship. A fleet paralyzed. A warning. By the time he finished, silence hung in the room like a suffocating fog. Finally, Supreme Chancellor Vorik leaned forward, his piercing gaze locked onto Chorus. "You mean to tell me," Vorik said, his voice dangerously quiet, "that an entire Salthor war fleet, our most advanced fleet, was defeated without a single shot being fired?" Chorus clenched his jaw. "Yes, Chancellor." The warlords exchanged uneasy glances. This was impossible. Unthinkable. The Salthor Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had battled against the most powerful species in the galaxy. And now, a single human vessel had broken them. Vorik's mandibles twitched. "And you fled." Chorus' claws dug into the table. "We had no choice." The warlord scoffed. "No choice. How could one ship, bring the greatest fleet in the galaxy to its knees?" Then another voice spoke. "The real question isn't what happened," said Grand Strategist Euros. His cold, calculating eyes scanned the room. "The question is, what does this mean?" Silence. No one had an answer. Euros continued. "We assumed humans were primitive. We assumed they were weak. But what if we were wrong?" His gaze darkened. "What if this wasn't an anomaly? What if this is just the beginning? Chorus swallowed hard. The thought had haunted him since that moment in the void. That ship, whatever it was, had let them go. Why? Because it didn't need to destroy them. Because it wanted them to carry a message, a single unspoken truth that would ripple across the galaxy. The humans are not to be challenged. Vorik exhaled slowly, his usual arrogance replaced with something far more dangerous. Fear. Send a diplomatic envoy, he ordered at last. We need to know what we're dealing with. Chorus hesitated. And if they refuse to negotiate? Vorik's jaw tightened. Then we do what we have always done. Chorus didn't reply. Because for the first time in Sci-fi history, that was no longer an option. And deep down, every warlord in that room knew it. Epilogue. The Silent Watcher. Far beyond the Sci-fi homeworld, in the cold void of space, the human ship remained. Unmoving. Watching. It had not pursued the Sci-fi fleet. It had not followed them home. It had done nothing. And yet, even across the vast distances of space, the Sci-fi could still feel its presence, still hear its unspoken warning, because the truth was simple. The war had never begun, and if the Sci-fi were wise, it never would. The ship that should not exist. The message spread faster than light itself. Across the Sci-fi empire, across allied species, across neutral territories, whispers of a phantom human ship began to circulate. No official records, no battle footage, just fear. Fear that the Sci-fi, the empire that had crushed countless worlds, had met something beyond their understanding, and lost without a fight. Deep within the empire, a forbidden investigation. While the Grand War Council debated whether to negotiate or retreat, a secret faction within the Sci-fi Intelligence Division, the Void Seekers, began their own mission. They needed to understand. They needed to know. What was that ship? Where did it come from? And most importantly, was it alone? A team of elite Sci-fi scientists and spies were dispatched to the last known coordinates of the anomaly. They arrived in the dead of space. Scanners picked up nothing. No human fleet, no energy signatures, no remnants of battle, just the quiet hum of the universe. Then, a distress signal. It was old, ancient even, buried beneath layers of radiation and static. They decrypted it, and what they heard made their blood run cold. Warning: do not approach. This ship is not abandoned. It is waiting. The Sci-fi agents stared at the transmission in stunned silence. A ship that was waiting. Waiting for what? One of the operatives, a seasoned warrior, shivered. His mandibles twitched as he whispered, "This isn't human technology." The lead scientist frowned. "What do you mean?" It was a human ship. The warrior shook his head. No, it was something else. He turned to the others, his eyes filled with something they had never seen before. Terror. That wasn't a warship. He swallowed hard. It was a warning beacon. Final transmission to the Sci-fi Empire. The Void Seekers never returned. Their ship sent one last automated message before vanishing into the void. We were wrong. It wasn't alone. After that, silence. What happens next? The Sci-fi Empire, once confident in its supremacy, faced a terrifying question. If that one human ship had been enough to cripple them, then what else was out there? What lay hidden in the vast darkness of space, watching, waiting? And if humanity had ships like that, what were they waiting for? The galaxy would never be the same again.